It seems to me that people that do automotive repairs on cars that aren't completely encased in rust, or maybe have bolts that actually still have the heads on them so that they can maybe, turned and removed with a socket, are not truly grasping the tire experience. Like you're just missing the best part. I'm just saying. So here, for your viewing pleasure, I'm fixing the subframe on this 2006 Mazda 6, and we're gonna see what kind of great rust we have gotten up here. We don't have a lift, so we're gonna do it the old-fashioned way. Normally I'd be using hardened sockets to take off the lug nuts, but they don't fit these particular rims, so I'm just going to use a regular socket. Also, I'm using this air hammer I got from Harbor Freight, Earthquake XT. It says it's good for 1,000 foot-pounds of torque, but it's not even close. It's not even close. But it has got me out of a couple of jams, so it's not, you can take off lug nuts, so hey, it's not all bad. I thought maybe I'd check the repair manual to see if it gave any helpful hints about sequence for taking off stuff. But I looked in my cabinet here, and although I have a lot of manuals, I don't seem to have a Mazda manual, which is pretty unfortunate. So I'm gonna wing it. I have no idea what I'm doing, but you're coming with me. Let's go. Okay, so let's look in here. So right over here, this hole, that does not, that's not supposed to be there. That's actually the subframe that's actually completely perforated. And what happened here is the top of the subframe, which has the steering rack on it, and the bottom of the subframe, which has the suspension on it, are no longer connected. So that's probably going to be a problem. So looking at this outright, I'm not sure how much of this stuff needs to come off. I mean, obviously the brakes and most of the suspension is going to have to be taken off of the subframe. Hopefully it doesn't have to be taken apart in parts, because that's really going to suck. The worst part about this whole thing is the brake fluid, okay? I'm going to get a subscriber for complaining about brake fluid, because anyone that's done a job like this and has been covered in brake fluid before knows how much brake fluid sucks. Okay? I hate brake fluid. So looking in here, the steering rack here is going to be attached to the steering wheel, and it's going to have hoses going to it and stuff like that. So we probably want to keep that, detach that first and keep that up against the car, which means that we're going to have to take apart all the things that attach this thing. So here you have the tie rod end, a ball joint. We're going to take out this cotter pin, which is, I don't know, effectively completely rusted out. And we're going to remove these ball joints from this, what's this thing called? I don't know, steering arm, I guess, with a ball joint remover tool, which I will go and grab right now. So here's an old school ball joint remover tool. So you jam this between the ball and the thing it's attached to, and it pops off your ball joint. But it also ends up destroying your boot pretty much 100% of the time. So if you don't ever want to use that ball joint again, you can use one of those. But otherwise, that tool is pretty much completely useless. So this guy is what I'm talking about. I've had this thing for decades, but I got to say, now that I'm looking at it and seeing all the ball joints on here and stuff, I'm going to be very lucky if this ends up fitting everything and able to get everything off, but we'll see how that goes. Here we go. Everything is frozen. Wear your safety glasses, kids. I'm going to go with the spray everything approach in case I might need to take it out because it's not evident what needs to be detached. Yeah, baby. I gotta say, whoever invented plastic screws can suck it because it's such a stupid design. Plastic rivets are a little bit better, I guess, because you can't really expect them to do anything except for pop in and then pop back out. What the hell is the freaking point of having a screw that doesn't turn? See here if you can get this screw, pry it out just a little bit. You can take it out. Once it's halfway out, it'll just come right out. And then go flying across the floor. Okay, perfect. Parkour! You know, I'm not feeling super happy about being under here. Especially with these jack stands. The jack stands are pretty beefy. But, for anybody that bought their jack stands at Harbor Freight, there was a number of recalls that says, oh, the jack stands tend to crumple. I'm like, oh, that's really helpful. Well, how's the point of the jack stand if you cannot count it enough to not fold when your head's underneath a freaking car? You know, when it takes 10 minutes to take out a cotter pin, you think maybe, is that a good indication of what's to come? I don't know. I spend a lot of time with these picks. A lot of times to just scrape off or rust off of something. These guys came from Craftsman. I have a couple sets of these. They're pretty good. It comes with a straight, squiggle, right angle. Really easy to lose too. What? Guys, I can't even make this up. This nut, I mean this bolt sheared off in a plastic clip. Sheared itself in half, coming out of a plastic clip. So as I was laying here on the floor, I was looking at this design, and it's actually kind of interesting. There's three A arms. There's our control arms. There's an upper and two lower. What's interesting about this is that the two lowers move not only up and down but side to side while you're steering. So I'm thinking that these two joints get a ton of work. I also noticed that the subframe is only connected to the two lower joints. So if I don't want, I'm gonna have to take apart the entire suspension if I if I take it apart from the top. But if I take it apart from just the bottom, all I have to do is take out these two lower joints. The two lower joints don't connect to the bottom of the upright in the right in a way that you can take them off easy. I'll see if I can get a picture of this thing. Yeah, these two guys here. What in the world? What tool takes that off? I don't even know. So I'm sure you can get the pickle fork on here. Where is that? This thing here. This thing that I said has no purpose. We can totally jam this dude in here and pry these two off. The problem is that if we do that, we're gonna destroy those ball joints, and we'll have to get new lower control arms. So call me crazy, but if I get two new lower control arms, which probably isn't a bad idea for the age of the vehicle. Let me rephrase that. It's not bad for the wear of the age of the vehicle, but is it completely ridiculous based on the fact that this vehicle has 100 and something, 80,000 miles on it? How much more life does the thing possibly have in it? Is this really the time to be replacing parts with new parts? I don't even know. I wish I could get feedback. You guys just tell me I'm crazy. Tell me I'm crazy or tell me I know what I'm doing, please. I think I'm going to get the parts. This is going to be so much easier. I won't have to take apart half the car just to take apart the subframe. Because the subframe's not really attached to anything. It has one mount on the engine, but the engine's actually held up by the chassis, so I don't even think I have to hold up the engine or anything. And then it's connected to the lowers. That's it. This thing's going flying out. I'm not even sure what's holding it in at this point. Oh, yeah, the steering rack. Yeah, the steering rack is going to have to come down because it looks like it only mounts from the top. So I think you have to drop the steering rack in order to disconnect it. Which super sucks! Okay, so I decided to break off the take off the lower suspension arms with the subframe and keep basically the upright arm, the shock, and all that stuff, and just leave it on the car. So I thought that would be the easiest way to replace this. And having seen that the lower A arms move pretty significantly when every time you steer. So there's some rubber bushings in here that probably get a lot of use. Every time you turn left and right, these things get torqued way out from one side to the other. So I'm thinking, if I want this vehicle to survive in the future, it makes sense that I would take these bushings and just replace them. I went to go see, I went and looked online to see how much they were, and the economy ones were $10. So I'm thinking, for $10, it'd be stupid not to just replace them. So I think I was on Rock Auto, and I found that they have lots of different qualities of different parts, and I started looking at the different qualities and different prices and stuff, and the price, it's one of those things where you can pay whatever you want. I mean, it went from, I think, $10 to like 100 something. So I ended up deciding to go with Moog components, pretty much for everything. And I got them in, and I mean, it looks, I don't know, it looks a lot like the one that's coming out. I mean, I'm sure there's a quality difference here between a $10 part and a $50 part. But, I don't know, we're going to throw these guys in and see how it works out. So, having said that, I was going to, I have to disconnect the lower control arms from the upright. And one of them, the forward one, I started on the driver's side, and the forward one will not come out. So I actually went and I found the right tool for this thing, and I bought a little kit. I'll show you the kit I bought on Amazon. It's actually not too bad of a kit, but this is the guy that I needed. And as soon as I took this out of the box, there's like a ball here inside this pin, and this ball came flying right out. So I think it was a spring on there, and it holds like this center pin together. But this basically, you screw down on this guy, and it pops out it pops the ball joint out. So I started turning down this thing, and you see right here, the first thing I did was there was a ball bearing there that kind of rubs up against here, and the first thing that happened was this ball bearing blew apart in half, and so I broke this within, I don't know, 5 minutes of having purchased it. So I guess that could have been better. But now that I spent a lot more time in here, it looked like this was starting to flex. I was like, I'm going to break it. So I went and got my pickle fork, and I got to say, it didn't really do much better. So I started wailing on this one. You can see what I did to the end. I think it's the first time I used this thing. But I beat the crap out of this thing, and this ball bearing will not come off. And you can see here, it's like it actually bent the metal on the bearing. I mean, on the fork. Actually bent the metal on the fork. So you can see over here, it literally like displaced the metal. And then having pounded this in, apparently hit something that it didn't want to hit and started turning. But between this side and this side is actually probably worse. So as I'm hammering this thing in, it's the metal is bending instead of popping out this bearing. Man, this thing is in there something fierce. Something fierce. Anyway, so I tried drilling it, and drilling isn't going really well. I'm a little concerned about hitting the taper. And I tried heating it, and I tried beating on it with this, and I tried pulling it out with this new tool. And I'm not doing so very good. So I think the next option is to completely turn the bolt into liquid with the torch. So, take it on the poll. Am I crazy? Am I crazy yet? I don't know. Vote now. So my plan was to take off the subframe with the 2 lower control arms, the steering rack, and nothing else. And to accomplish that, my plan was to take off these control arms with a ball joint puller, and that did not happen. That I beat the living snot out of these guys. And the ball joints didn't even come out of the sleeves. The sleeves actually end up coming right out of the upright. What a mess. So we're gonna have to press those things out and press them back into the upright. But let's see what else I got. Oh yeah, so I took off that plate that holds on the back of the subframe. I did that on both sides. There's a couple of bolts here. This is just for torque on the engine, so that doesn't actually hold up the engine. The engine's held up by the subframe. I'm sorry, the engine's held up by the unibody, so you don't have to support it when you take off the subframe. And then I just disconnected this. The only other thing in here was this power steering line, and it's on both sides. Yeah, so once that's loose, I think I'm going to be able to lower the entire thing, including the steering rack, without taking the steering rack off, because I don't think you can take the steering rack off until you drop the subframe. There's one bolt in here that was kind of a pain, so looking forward, this guy and this hose were bolted onto the subframe on the back side. I mean, on the front, so I had to reach up behind here and like take out these 2 bolts, and that kind of sucked. I guess that's it. So taking off the power steering and trying to drop the rack without removing any of the fittings on it. If I don't have to get power steering fluid everywhere, that would be way better. So I got I got the couple jack stands holding up the car. And then I got a couple of jack stands holding up what's left of the wheel assembly. One jack holding up the subframe. And it's actually, all the bolts in the subframe are actually off right now. So the only thing holding it up is the jack. So hopefully we'll be able to lower that down without doing anything crazy. That's it. Here we go. So this was a little interesting. This is looking inside the driver's side wheel well. And the steering rack that goes up through the body there. So I disconnected the steering rack from the steering column inside the vehicle, which was pretty easy. It's just one bolt to take off. And then this boot here, you can see the clean part of the you can see in the clean part of the steering rack here had that boot pulled over it, so I had to pull that boot off so that the rack would drop. Yep, so I had to shake it a little bit to make sure all the four corners were coming down at the same time. But long story short, it's down now, and there's plenty of slack on these power steering lines. So I'm just gonna go take the rack off of this guy and slide it out, and slide the new subframe in. Oh, and obviously I gotta put all the suspension parts back in. Yee. So here's an interesting tidbit. I originally tried to take off this engine mount on this side here with a nut, and interestingly enough, the nut is actually welded onto the subframe, so you have to take it out from the bolt side. It's almost crazy to think that this was actually on the road not a mile ago, because this is supposed to be attached, and this is part of the sway bar. Yeah, and yeah, that's not good. Although I gotta say, besides the fact that the sway bar wouldn't work, the mount for the steering I thought was loose, but it doesn't appear to be that bad. It doesn't appear that it would have been a catastrophic failure for the steering. Although I will say, it wasn't long before something really bad happened here. This is all perforated down here. And at some point, that part of the suspension would have completely detached. Yeah, it's definitely good that we're in here fixing this. It really kind of makes you think twice about your inspection station. So if you have inspections where you are, for goodness sakes, don't find the cheap guy that's just going to lick him and stick him, because he's really not doing you much of a favor. That's it. So this is the new subframe. You can see here it's a used frame. I got it off a damaged vehicle out of Texas, so it has very little rust on there. It's a little superficial surface rust on there. And I'm starting to put on the suspension components, and I had to transfer the sway bar over from the old subframe to the new subframe. And as soon as I slide this into the car, I'll be able to hook the steering rack back up, because it's still attached via the hoses. All right, so I beat on this these lower control arms pretty bad, and these bushings came right out of the uprights, and so this was supposed to split. You know, this guy was supposed to stay inside the upright, and this guy was supposed to come out, but it did not, because it is frozen. And I got to say, this little mechanical divider, ball joint separator thing, not really surprising, I guess, that it didn't work. But we're going to see how the hydraulic press works on this guy. So I can't really get the press inside here because I don't have the right fixtures and stuff for it. So I took this guy, and I literally used my bandsaw here, my portable bandsaw. Picked this thing up at Harbor Freight. This thing actually works pretty good. It has a plastic wheel in here that wears out, so that's kind of a bummer, but I've used this thing 100 times, and it's really helped me out. Anyway, so this thing, just like that guy, this guy, I need to get it off this thing, but I can't push on it because I can't get anything inside here. So I cut it straight off. And we'll, I'm going to got this hardened socket here. And use the hydraulic press to push out the pin. So there it is, my press. But I gotta say, you know, if you have this problem, you know, it's not just you. Everyone has this problem. Because they haven't used a hydraulic press or some tool in like, I don't know, a year. And then in front of that is a canvas bag, some buckets, a box, some air hose, a tire iron, some gas cans, a play mat, some vice grips. Yeah. So I don't know. What do you do? Do I work over it, or do I actually take the time to move this stuff out of the way? I'm kind of thinking about just working over it. All right. Oh, I might have to lower this. This is gonna suck. All right, here we go. You know, I'm gonna record this because this is the only part about this entire thing that actually might be interesting. I got this 20-ton press from again from Harbor Freight. I got a lot of stuff from Harbor Freight. It just can't beat the price performance. So 20-ton press. I'll probably use this thing like a dozen times, but when you need it, it's so useful. And when you don't need it, it's such a huge thing. Oh, snap! There was some pressure on that guy. I gotta say, you know, the press didn't a pretty short order of something that's I've been fighting for the past, I don't know, day. But that guy came out in a jiff. There we go. Now we're gonna push this bushing back into the upright, and so we can get the new guys in. Yeah, it's funny. It's like it looks, you know, looks perfect. You know, it looks like it's not even rusted. It's just so jammed in there from, you know, 175,000 miles of use. I thought I had a bearing press, but having looked for it, I realized that I probably just rented it from my local auto parts store. That's a tool that you can usually just rent and not have to purchase. But instead of running out to rent that, I found a large bolt and some oversized washers, so I just decided to press this bushing back into the upright using a bolt and just a ratchet. Alright, so didn't think this was possible, but here we are. Subframe's up in place, and this sway bar got jammed underneath the control arm. And you think that it wouldn't be able to do that, but it's like a 1/4 inch here that it can't slide by there. So I don't know. Check, make sure your sway bar's in the right spot. It's supposed to be up here. Before you tighten down before you tighten up the subframe. So that was it. Installation was pretty much the reverse of disassembly. I checked online to find the correct torque specs for the different bolts in the system, and everything went together pretty cleanly. After this, I will be getting in alignment, even though the control arms don't drastically affect the alignment of the car. It does make a lot of sense just to go and get it realigned. So I'm going to go and do that. And that's it. Thanks for watching. Hopefully my disaster maybe has helped somebody out. Good day.